so official, right? Well, thank you so much for joining, and just maybe a great intro to the conversation. If you could just sort of walk through how you went from working in a lot of different fields and building an interesting mix and hybrid of business and marrying that to what you're doing now as president of Menlo College.
Sure, happy to go back through my, memory lane there. So, Chicago native, born in the city, raised in the north suburb in Evanston. Went east for college, but returned to Chicago for graduate school and ended up unexpectedly. This wasn't my life plan, but ended up working at the University of Chicago. This will start to be a repetitive theme for me for some. What I thought was going to be a short term as I moved into the career path I thought I was heading towards when I started business school at Chicago. But that turned into a 16-year stint at the university, and it was, I think by the time I passed the 15th year, I thought it was forever. It's a great university. I enjoyed being part of it and had several different roles while I was there. Ended up my last 8 years at Chicago held the title of Associate Dean and Principal Business Officer of the Pritzker School of Medicine. So it was a varied set of responsibilities, a compelling environment. And I found ways in which I was able to contribute and continue to learn even after 16 years. But one record-setting cold December in Chicago, I received a call from a friend of a friend asking if I wanted to look at a job in California. And I actually still remember swiveling in my chair to look out the window to think about how I was going to respond, and realized I couldn't see out of the window because the snowdrift was so high. That was a first floor office, but still. So fast forward, I moved. But the move was a big one for me and unexpected. I hadn't thought I was going to be leaving higher ed, but it was an opportunity to try my hand in a very different capacity. And I thought, well, if they're willing to take a gamble on me, I think it'll be interesting for me to see if I can contribute in a very different area. And it was a consulting role. It was a consulting role in the healthcare IT space, which was a significant part of my responsibilities at Chicago. So there was a logical tie there. And it very specifically involved coordination with physicians, in the first instance, physicians who were part of the Permanente medical practice as part of Kaiser Permanente. And that was one of the reasons I was an attractive candidate to them. They were looking for someone who had proven ability to collaborate effectively with physicians, as well as someone with familiarity in the healthcare IT space. That turned into a 10-year gig between two different employers, 5 years at an employer called Science Applications International, where I ended up as a VP and division manager, and 5 years then in a similar role at a boutique consulting group called First Consulting Group. So I went from a very large organization to a tiny one, 5 years each. And then with 3 other people, had the opportunity to launch a startup, also in the healthcare IT space, which was where I had spent the previous 10 years. And we thought we were going to change the IT infrastructure for healthcare delivery in the United States, but it turned out our most compelling audience, or most interested audience, were overseas in Europe. Nationalized healthcare systems, that proved to be the sweet spot. So 8 years later, and 8 years after riding the roller coaster ride of that's inherent in being part of a startup, we were able to sell it. We were able to sell it for this much money. So technically a successful exit, but it didn't set me on easy street. And so I had a decision point at that time, because we sold the technology. It was the company that bought it was interested in the technology, not in the team. And so all of us who were then part of the company went in separate ways. And after reflection, I decided, after a career in higher ed, in the for-profit business world, and with the startup, that I wanted to return to higher ed. I thought that was the place that resonated best with me. I saw the personal reward system greatest, even if the monetary rewards weren't the greatest in higher ed, and so chose to pursue an opportunity in that space. Contacted someone I knew in the search industry in higher ed, and I said, okay, my higher ed background is largely in academic medical centers. I want to stay in the Bay Area. So if you can find me openings at UCSF, at Stanford, maybe I'll go up as far as Davis. If I have to, I'll slum and go to Berkeley. They don't have a medical school, but I could see that. And she said, well, I don't have anything at any of those places, but I do at Menlo College, which I had never heard of. I was up in the North Bay doing a lot of traveling outside of the Bay Area, but for the various jobs I'd had while in California, and hadn't investigated the higher ed landscape in the Bay Area very much. So I looked it over on the website and the information she sent me, and I called her back and I said, look, thanks very much, but I don't think there's a fit there. It's so small. There's no professional schools, no graduate programs at the time. I don't see that as a place where I can thrive, or that I could contribute as much as I'd hope. And she was much smarter than I was. She said, look, you haven't interviewed for 18 years, which at the time was correct. She said, view it as just a practice run. You're rusty in your interview skills, and besides, you never know. So I followed her advice, and within a relatively short time was quite enticed with the opportunity, and thought, I can learn from this place. I can derive a lot of rewards, and I think I can contribute here. But it's probably a 2 or 3 year gig.
Yeah.
I repeated that mistake. It's I think it's the last time I'll make that mistake, but we'll see. I came in not as the president. I came in a role that was a new role. It was created, called executive vice president. And a few years later, I found myself working with the board to lead a search for the next president. And I thought I was doing a great job with the search, had 2 fabulous candidates, but the board chair sat me down and said, we're just not interested in proceeding with the search. We'd like you to apply for the job. And it was like, I didn't see myself as presidential material. That wasn't my aspiration. And besides, as we talked earlier, I have this place up in Sonoma County, which 87 miles away. I was kind of eager at that point to find a base up north. It took 3 conversations with the board chair before I realized I was looking a gift horse in the mouth, and it was an incredible opportunity that was being offered to me. And okay, I said I wasn't going to do it again, but I actually did, and I said it. It's something I tell students all the time: never, here's was my mistake. Don't repeat this. I said to the board chair, I'm going to serve 1 term, so 3 years max, and then we're going to do another search. Okay. That was 7 years ago.
I'm
so
sensing
clearly,
a theme here.
there's a theme. There's a theme, and it doesn't reflect well on me, I admit. But I learned from my mistakes. Finally, it just takes a few times. 7 years later, it is a role where I've been able to, I believe, contribute, and but also derive just tremendous personal growth and satisfaction and rewards. So I'm enormously pleased the opportunity came my way, and will be forever grateful to the board chair for not only thinking about it, but persevering despite my saying no, and no again. And the only reflection that gives me pause is I remember telling people when I joined Menlo College after 8 years working with a startup, I said, I'm just so, it was a fascinating experience. I'd do it again if I could turn back the clock, but I'm not going to do it again going forward, because it's such an incredible roller coaster ride. chasing VC, the chasing purchase options, the incredible growth, and then you lose a client and you have to shrink quickly, and it was just emotionally draining. And I actually thought I was getting off a roller coaster ride, and it turns out I was correct in one sense. I got off that roller coaster ride, but particularly with the small college, there is so much that this experience has in common with the wide-ranging emotions attached to being part of the leadership team of a startup. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been a wonderful experience.
I'm so glad you read my mind, because you segued exactly where I was going to go, which is, you're in
Okay.
this, very competitive environment, very up and down, very emotionally taxing thing of being part of this small team that's building and trying to essentially conquer a sub industry, right? And take it over. And then you sort of go and sort of make a pivot at a really critical time in the history of the field. Pre-COVID, while things are changing, while we're seeing all these sort of converging market factors, and the total population of college-going students shrinking. What was that transition like? Because I could see how it would be very challenging to go from a startup to a place that traditionally moves slower, has a different governance structure, but at the same time is experiencing the same market disruptions that you're seeing, that you're sort of competing with. What was that transition point like to go into that new space?
I don't know that I have any insights that will be earth shattering there. I'm uh, an ambitious person, both in terms of what I hope to accomplish, but more broadly, the way I hope to support an organization's growth and development. And so, that was the informing driver for me, both with the startup and then with the college. But absolutely, the dynamics and the particulars are very, very different. But I think the theme for each, as you touch on, is figuring out what your core strengths are, how you can best position in a very difficult and dynamic environment. So dynamic that didn't anticipate COVID, of course, like anybody else. In fact, there's another mistake I made at the beginning of COVID. I remember having a conversation. First started these Zoom calls, and at the time, on my desk behind me, I had something not too dissimilar to what I have now: a few books, a plant. I didn't have the Menlo College sign, and I reached out to a few of our coaches, and I said, "Look, just for a few weeks until this blows over, let me borrow a few of your trophies, because I'd like to display those behind me to display my Menlo pride." Uh, and that was 4 years ago, and now the trophy collection has outgrown that credenza, and can't see it on the camera, but I have probably a 20-foot long set of bookcases that are just piled with trophies that speak to one of Menlo's core strengths. And this will come back to the last question you posed. The athletics is one of the core strengths that we chose to emphasize here. It's part of navigating the ways in which you can differentiate. And I, in your question, you use the word conquer. I'm not trying to conquer the higher ed landscape. I'm trying to ensure Menlo College's success, and in a very crowded and, as we keep saying, dynamic world. And athletics is a key differentiator for us. But I'd say the number one differentiator is like the real estate mantra. It's location, location, location. We're in the heart of Silicon Valley. When we were founded, Silicon Valley, of course, was nowhere near a reflection of what it is today. But it was in its infancy, and I heard a presentation recently about the history of Silicon Valley, and there were many themes that resonated with me in terms of Menlo College. The ducking and the weaving and the changing ways in which in one case Silicon Valley, in the other case Menlo College, need to conceive of their focus and their goals to continue to evolve. And you also used a reference to the slower pace of higher ed. That very well may be true of larger institutions. Small institutions, that the ones that are being most successful in this country are the ones that are nimble, and we are pretty nimble. Of course, I don't want to be too Pollyannish about it. We have factions. There's dealing the almost ingrained set of challenging dynamics that can exist between faculty and management. And of course, there's the town gown, particularly challenging for us in our location in the town of Atherton, California, the most expensive zip code. People do often ask me if I think that Menlo College will expand our footprint, and I, look around at the housing prices around here, and I try never to say never, but on that one, it's a safe bet. If we ever expand our footprint, it won't be in the town of Atherton. But I'm enormously pleased that we have about 40 acres here in this town, and it's something of an oasis. But coming back, trying to keep myself on point. Location. We have tied our star in so many ways to Silicon Valley, and not necessarily to slavishly imitate it, but to learn from it and to expose our students to it. Our students come to us literally from all over the world. We have 48 different countries represented on this campus this semester. Most of the students, the majority of the students are from California, but most of our students come to us because they appreciate that they are going to have a connection forged with Silicon Valley during their time here. One of the interesting aspects of Menlo, despite the fact that we have 48 different countries represented, the majority of our graduates who go directly into the workforce, which is the majority of our graduates, they tend to do that right here in Silicon Valley for the first few years. And that, to me, that speaks to two things. One, it speaks to the extent to which they've been exposed to Silicon Valley throughout their time here, both in the classroom as well as in initiatives that we have to provide students with direct exposure to companies and industries here in the Silicon Valley. But it also speaks to our internship program, which we launched almost 12 years ago now, and is mandatory for for 80% of our students, and most of those internships take place here in the Silicon Valley, and and our students are required to complete that internship in the summer between their junior and senior year, and most of the students end that summer with a job offer in hand post-graduation, which is extraordinary. It's extraordinary for confidence building, for a sense that they have a direct opportunity to enter the workforce productively. They don't all necessarily take those job offers. One of the reasons you take an internship is to validate that the career path you thought you wanted is actually the one that'll work well for you. And sometimes students come back and say, maybe not. But it's a wonderful way to very directly tie the experience our students have had in the classroom with the work environment, and to help them understand their strengths, where they need to strengthen, and again, what will make them tick, and find the connection to their jobs that'll propel them to success in their lives.
That's a great.
That's a very long answer to a short question. Sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, I think that covers ground with some of the other pieces that we're sort of thinking through. And in terms of positioning, it sounds like athletics plays a huge role. I mean, you're in such a great location. You're leveraging that a lot in terms of internships, in terms of outcomes, but also letting students explore, figure out what they like, where they're good. So I think there's a lot of sort of strong things there. How do you think about enrollment management, right? Because you are in a very competitive landscape, and you're in this sort of tricky space of not just competing against the great colleges that are in your region, the great colleges that are in California, but also like all the other competitive spaces, right? There's this sort of narrative around not going to college, sort of narratives around like online programs or different ways to sort of get these sort of credentials. And yet here you are, continuing to sort of get classes, get good outcomes, do these good things that are sort of positioning you in the long term. How do you think about that positioning question and then enrollment management sort of writ large?
Yeah. It's I can't sugarcoat it. It's enormously challenging, and it's absolutely the demographics are challenging, but worse yet, the various elements that are influencing the extent to which not only are we having fewer high school graduates, but fewer high school graduates that are choosing to go to college. And it's something that I personally find extraordinarily depressing, both as a college president, but also as a citizen of this country, because I am absolutely convinced of the value of a college education at any point in time in the history of this country, but perhaps more so now than ever before, for so many reasons. Not the least of which is something we were talking on before you started recording, which is the state of K through 12 education in this country, which produces graduates who are not, a overgeneralization perhaps, but are not well prepared to succeed at college. So an institution like ours, which isn't competing for the best of the best. We're competing for those who show potential and are, as a word that's sometimes overused, who are strivers, who see the value and the opportunity to change the trajectory of their lives. Those are the students we're looking for. So it's rare that a student, perhaps non-existent, that a student would apply to Menlo College and apply to Stanford, but a student would apply to Menlo College and, for a California resident, a UC campus or a Cal State campus. But we tend to find success helping those students appreciate that as wonderful as a UC or Cal State education may be, the size and the attention to every individual's personal success that they'll receive at Menlo College will be far more transformative for their experience and be much more likely to enable their success. And more broadly, we've invested enormous amounts in what I'll broadly call the academic success infrastructure. Some people refer to it as the scaffolding that you have to build around each student to help them augment the skills they need to augment in order to be successful, and then shed that part of the scaffolding as they progress, so that by the time they hit that commencement stage, that scaffolding is completely gone. But that's an investment that we've had to make to promote the success of our students. And I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but it's interesting for us. Almost a quarter of our students come from outside this country, and a broad generalization. More of the students who are educated outside of this country hit our classrooms better prepared to study than the students who are graduates of our own schools. Again, so distressing both as a college president, because I'd rather not have to make all those investments in those scaffolding programs, but also as a citizen of this country, because so many of those same students who come to Menlo College where the scaffolding exists will go to another institution that doesn't have the investment or the resource or hasn't prioritized the kind of assistance that's needed to further the success and again change the trajectory. Menlo College attracts an enormous amount of first-gen students. More than 40% of this year's freshmen are self-identify as first-gen. And you alluded, I think before we started recording, to the extent to which the parents' education level is a a strong indicator of future educational success as well as life success. So by virtue of educating so many first generation students, we see our mission, and we're not a faith-based school, but very much a mission-based school. We see our mission as touching the lives of not just those who are being educated here today, but future generations that haven't yet been born. And it sounds like a Hallmark movie, but it's very real, and it's palpable here. And I think those who are part of the Menlo College community embrace that mission, just as we also embrace the fact that we have yet another aspect to our mission that is dramatically different from the ideals that were being pursued at our founding as could possibly be. We were founded almost 100 years ago. We were founded as an all-male school. We weren't necessarily founded as an all-white male school, but looking at yearbook pictures, could very well have been. They all look like you and me for a very long time. We finally admitted women in 1972. Took us a while. And fast forward to today, we have 2 minority serving institution designations by the federal government, both Hispanic serving institution and Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander institution. Fun fact, only 1% of all colleges and universities in this country have dual minority serving designations. We're one of them. But it's a point of pride. It's a point of pride whether we were located in Peoria or Kansas City or Atherton, but it's particularly impressive that we have achieved that right here in Atherton, again, in the heart of Silicon Valley, where we are dedicated to opening our doors to help achieve a college degree for students whose forebears were either denied access to higher ed or just didn't have the means for higher ed. But it's very much a part of the mission, and that fact is what makes our engagement with this community and this institution so compelling, and what I didn't foresee looking from the outside in 13 years ago, and the reason I didn't just last 3 years but have lasted so far 13.
That's such a powerful story, and so much there, and sort of the power of purpose and how you're educating and building scaffolding that is going to sort of support multi-generational families, and I think sort of position the region in a completely different way that's going to sort of just change the outcomes and the living standards and so much more. So many sort of really sort of positive streams downstream from what you're doing. When you look at, you're in such a competitive place with regards to talent management, right? I mean, you're competing against like so many incredible organizations, so many different types of organizations for talent. How do you think about approaching that and getting the types of staff to support this really incredible mission? And how do you approach hiring, professional development, and all of those pieces to sort of see your mission come to fruition?
Yeah, you're determined to bring me to tears. It's an incredibly challenging aspect of the Menlo College journey. I treasure our location here in the middle of Silicon Valley, but I also decry it. Right, wages are high, cost of living is high. It's almost impossible for us to recruit someone and with the expectation that they'll reside in the immediate area. We provide some housing on campus. We have 23 either houses or apartments here on campus for faculty and staff spread around the campus. I'd love to have more. It would be a huge differentiator for us in terms of our ability to recruit. Parenthetically, it would be a good thing for the town of Atherton because California has a housing mandate, and it would be one way to help, and the town's on board with it. But neither the town nor we have identified the resources to make it possible. In any event, the recruiting for us, we generally look locally. The fact that this is such a vibrant area and that there are more people employed in Silicon Valley today than there were pre-pandemic, and it was solidly growing pre-pandemic, so it had a dip right after after the it wasn't the tech bust, but earlier this year there were a number of layoffs in Silicon Valley that hit the headlines, and yet there was a lot of change in the dynamics of the Silicon Valley employment, such that more people are working now than worked pre-pandemic, and a lot of those people come here with spouses, and a lot of those spouses are looking for jobs. So that's an enormous asset for us, because that's a constantly incoming talent pool. We also, because of institutions you may have heard of, like Stanford University, Berkeley, UCSF, Santa Clara, there are a lot of PhDs being minted and newly minted who are looking for teaching experience. So I tend to think we have one of the strongest adjunct teaching candidate pool of just about anywhere, and it's I don't want to make it sound like a cakewalk to find the right person to bring into our classroom, but there is a big pool there, and generally speaking, we're bringing people into the classroom who bring real value because of their education and or their work experience. So we also have people who are adjunct professors whose day job is with Google and Facebook in various roles. So it's an interesting mix. But full-time faculty, unless we hit that sweet spot where their spouse is here in the area, or they have family reasons to be in the area, that's tough for us. So, but for all of the people who become part of our community, and this will come back to the theme, one of our differentiators is the ways in which I described us before as a mission-based institution. And for people for whom that resonates, this becomes a very compelling opportunity. It's not necessarily easy, because our students in the main don't necessarily come to us with a thirst for learning. They're personally ambitious, but again, to generalize, perhaps not in a very focused way. For many of our students, a line I hear very, very often is, my family has made sacrifices to make it possible for me to pursue my degree. I want to be gainfully employed upon graduation so I can give back to my family. And so they're, in that, I used the word strivers before. In that sense, they fit the definition of that word. But again, they don't, even though they have that rather diffuse goal, they don't necessarily at first connect all the dots in terms of what they need to do in order to achieve that goal. And so, particularly for our faculty, full-time and part-time, they take on a huge challenge to work with our students. Are the rewards there? Oh, they're incredible. But when I think about particularly some of our part-time faculty who may have they may be an adjunct faculty member at Stanford and an adjunct faculty here, a world of difference in terms of that classroom experience. But again, the rewards are so different. And I'm not. I love Stanford. I think Stanford's a fabulous place, and I wish them every success. But I also think we occupy a very different space within the higher ed landscape, and I think that diversity of educational opportunities is essential because of the diversity of our species, and so we serve in a very important one. And for the faculty and staff who, as I said before, resonate with that mission, it's a great place to be. Not easy, but great.
Yeah, not easy, but really rewarding, and I think so much depth to the answer there. How do you think about board management in this sort of broader context? Because it seems to me that the mission that you have is just so critical. It's so obvious, sort of coming from you, around like the increasing of like the importance of that plays in your life as a leader, and plays in everybody that works at Menlo. How do you think about the board sort of piece in that, and sort of making sure that helping sort of guide you towards the place that you want to see Menlo go?
Yeah. Uh, just as I think of Menlo as occupying a distinct space, our board is very distinct in terms of the characteristics as well. Almost broad generalization, not backed by data. I'm talking to a data guy. Sorry in advance, but 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 I'm gonna go out on a limb and say most every institution that from the outside looks like Menlo College in terms of our size, our national stature or lack thereof, in terms of name recognition, uh, the almost everyone has a board that's dominated by alumni. This is our board, in marked contrast, is dominated by people who have achieved incredible professional success in their lives. But of our 16 voting members, only 4 are alumni. Now it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
It's both a point of pride and a goal, something we need to work on. I want more alumni who are invested in the future of this institution. But the fact that we've been able to attract such committed professionals to support the mission of Menlo College when they could be on the board of their own institutions or a number of other organizations that might have more cachet at their next cocktail party, but they're choosing to invest their time and money and emotional energies to Menlo College. And it comes back to, again, I keep using the word, it comes back to our mission.
Yeah.
They're inspired by what we're doing. And that is unbelievably rewarding. And having had such a long tenure here at Menlo College, I've had the opportunity to play a part in recruiting members to the board, in encouraging members to maintain their commitment to the board, and I won't name names, but I can tell you when I talk to my counterparts at other universities, I very often hear complaints about their board, and whether it's intransigence or unrealistic expectations or not feeling like there's a partnership in place or not feeling like they have their backs. I never feel any of those things. Quite the reverse. Our board understands our challenges, maybe not as acutely as I do living it day to day, but they understand it. They're incredibly supportive. They are there for us during high times as well as the challenging times, and I learn from them. And I am inspired by their commitment again. Given that the majority of them could be anywhere, and yet have chosen to be part of this community. So I think there's a theme that runs through all this, which is again, finding those distinguishing characteristics, emphasizing those, making those your cause, because not only does it inform where you need to go with the institution in terms of the leadership, but it also brings people together. And again, not all harmony. We have lots of struggles here, but generally speaking, the community understands why we're working so hard to ensure our success, not just today, but as we're nearing our centennial for the next 100 years. In some ways, that was on most vivid display when the pandemic broke, because with the onset of the pandemic, it threatened the very existence of Menlo College, and this community came together in exceptionally inspiring ways and helped our students in ways that went above and beyond. It was wonderful to behold, particularly given all the challenges that surfaced that were lessons for all of us, whether it was exposures to the home lives of some of our students that required us rethinking our relationship with them during that critical time, whether it was food insecurity, which rose to the surface, whether it was the number of students who lacked access to the internet in their home environment, whether it was figuring out how to support those students who chose to remain living on campus throughout the pandemic. Those first few years, when early on I thought, okay, we're closing our residence halls, we'll switched on. We had zero presence online, and within 2 weeks had 100% presence online, and a large number of students who for a number of different reasons chose to continue living on campus, which, as I tell people, probably aged me about 50 years, because it was we didn't know how to keep them safe, right? And yet we made it through that exceptionally well, given all the challenges. But the effects are still reverberating. We're not yet back to the institution we were in 2019 in some ways. In other ways, we're hitting all cylinders, but in terms of the high level enrollment, we're not quite there yet to achieving the levels of enrollment we had in 2019. But we are back growing, and again, we're doing that by emphasizing the key distinguishing features of Menlo College.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really.
I went all there from a question about the board. Sorry, I was a little ranging there.
That's actually really, really good. I think that's a beautiful place to end on, because I think it's both realistic and hopeful, right? Around we have these massive challenges. There are these market forces and these changes that are happening that are really big. However, I think you're leaning into your strengths and leveraging and using the things that you have at your disposal to create a product, a service, an experience that truly sort of differentiates in such a sort of crowded space. Stephen, where can people learn more about the work and sort of follow along with the journey of Menlo and the growth and things that you're working on?
So it's as a reflection of our age, www.menlo.edu. That's our website and the central point for information. I also invite people to come experience Menlo. One thing we didn't touch on, which fits as part of the closure, more than 70% of our students live on campus. It's a residential campus community, and even though we hit so many key aspects of diversity with our community, there are some aspects that our students share. Living on campus, really immersing themselves in the Menlo experience, and to your question, is one of them, and I invite people to come to campus to experience it, because I think it's a pretty wonderful aspect of Menlo College that is palpable when you come onto this campus. And I could keep going, but we're drawing to a close, so I'll stop on that. And of course, I should also point out, this is like free advertising, right? You go to our website, there's this little donate here box up at the top right.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage people to click on that. People used to say of small colleges that they're tuition dependent, and absolutely we are, but the key to success these days is being philanthropic dependent and realizing a degree of success in that regard, because without philanthropy we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Yeah, it's how you change lives. Really. Well, thank you. This has been really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate your listening to me ramble, Mike, and talking about my favorite subject, Menlo College.
Absolutely. I'm going to hit stop here. Stephen, you were amazing. Thank you.
Shucks. Okay, wait, why'd you stop there? I want to record that.